Hello and welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express papers Chandigarh edition. Now, from today's newspaper, one news of concern is Mumbai pollution. So, this we have an opinion as well as on the front page. Then, there is an opinion concerning politicization of civil services. Right. So, this is an important topic from ethics point of view, governance as well as ethics. Then this article concerning the rise or the increase in the yields of the US bonds. So the working of the bonds, what is the concept of yield, coupon rate, besides how this development affects the US economy as well as Indian economy. So this is important, more so for prelims actually, because we have seen, economic principles being asked in the prelims paper, MCQ ways. Okay, so let's move forward. So first news is about Mumbai. So Mumbai pollution. There is also an opinion. I'll combine these together and cover it here itself. Okay. It has come to light that in Mumbai, the air quality index is worse than that of Delhi, especially during the winter months. Imagine, air quality index, an indicator of pollution, is more than that of Delhi. Now, this is a very unusual phenomena. In the northern part, as a whole, as a rule, during the winter months, the pollution is normally more as compared to the coastal cities. Bombay is a coastal city. The winds blow; it allows the dispersal of pollution. While in the northern part, this is not the case. In the northern part, there are certain geographical phenomena because of which the pollutants remain trapped. The pollutants remain trapped in this area, and besides, we continue to add pollutants. So normally here there is more pollution in the northern part as compared to the coastal areas. But now we are seeing an exception where we're seeing Mumbai is having more as compared to Delhi. Now let me tell you this phenomena also. The phenomena in the northern part is that in the northern part there is winters. Winters are more pronounced as compared to the coastal areas. And during winters, what happens is there is limited sun rays. So the surface of the earth does not heat up. It is actually very cold. Right? It is very cold. So the air around the surface also is cold. It's very cold. It is actually colder than the air above. It is colder. So air above is actually slightly warmer as compared to the air below it. So it creates an envelope. It creates an air mass, warm air mass and cold air mass. It creates an envelope. It does not allow the air to escape. It is like an umbrella. So you keep adding pollutants, the air does not escape. So that is what happens in the northern part. You must have studied in your physical geography temperature inversion. So that's the problem. In Mumbai, there is nothing like this. It's relatively warm, right? And besides the winds, we expect the sea breeze to be there. Okay. Now what is happening? Why is Mumbai having more pollution then? Mumbai is having more pollution. It is said that obviously industrial activities, landfills, like in North, is there here also. But now what is happening is because of climate change type phenomena, the winds are not flowing in the desired direction, and therefore the pollutants are not escaping. In fact, there is a mention of La Nina event. La Nina event. In a normal event during the winter months, we know that first the southwest monsoon is there in the normal monsoon season. The winds blow from southwest, and then there is a reversal of winds. That is, the wind blows from the northeast direction. So these winds take away the pollutants. They disperse this thing. But during a La Nina type event, the seasonal reversal of monsoon does not take place, or it is weakened. So this wind is not flowing or with adequate force, and therefore the dispersal of pollutants are not happening. So that is the basic thing. Right. So this year also, this phenomena is more pronounced. Okay, so I have covered with opinion and this article together. Now here they are talking about the issue of landfills, right? The Mumbai civic agencies took their eyes off waste mountain. That is the issue of landfills. Then the burning of solid waste, unsustainable solid waste management practices. These are your GS3 topics: pollution, environment. Okay. Besides, we also get the issue of urban pollution. So one is GS1 where we discuss the geography component, and the GS3 is where we're discussing mainly the environment, not so much on the geographical phenomena. Okay, next. Cabinet status for a ex-bureaucrat, VK Pandian. So ex-bureaucrat has been given cabinet status in the Odisha government. So this person, Mr. Pandian, was the aide to the Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik in Odisha. He applied for voluntary retirement, and thereby this person is now working as a rank equivalent of a cabinet minister and will be responsible for governance functions. Now he has a major achievement to his name, and this is known as the 5T initiative of the Odisha government. So this is something that we can quote in our answer writing or governance reforms, etc. So 5T. What are these 5Ts of good governance maybe? The 5Ts are transparency, teamwork, technology, and time-bound service delivery. Oh, I think these are self-explanatory. These things are there. It will lead to good governance. So these 4Ts combined will result in transformation for the good. So these are the 5Ts. Right. So this we can use in answer writing. Now the issue of appointing him as the cabinet of ex-bureaucrat in getting into the political side, we will discuss in the opinion section. That's mentioned there. Okay. Next. UNSC meeting took place, United Nations Security Council. By the way, there are 15 members, 5 permanent and 10 temporary. Okay. So this meeting took place in Brazil. Brazil is the chair. Previously, it was India. Okay. So here, the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, he says, no one is above law. So Israel, which is striking Gaza, they have to abide by international laws. Okay, so that is the main thing. So UN is trying to be neutral. On the other hand, we hear the state remark of the US. US is saying that be it Hamas, be it Lashkar-e-Taiba, which affects India, they are similar and we should take a strong response. These violence are not unjustifiable. Now, I think the reference of Lashkar-e-Taiba is in the context of India, that India should take a clear stand on this issue. India is taking, okay, we are with Israel, but even with Palestine at the same time. So I think it is indicative of this mention of Lashkar-e-Taiba over here. Now, there is a mention of a UN agency which is saying hospitals are collapsing, no water, no electricity in Gaza. And this agency is known as UNRWA. So what is the full form of UNRWA? So it is UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Fine. This came up in for refugees who were displaced in 1948 Palestinian War. Headquarter Amman in Jordan, Gaza, and Palestinian Authority. Okay. Yes, this news. I personally feel advertisements, especially those issued by the government, gives us important ideas for exam. So this is still telling us about Cyberthon, and it tells us as to obviously how police how IT etc. can work, IT companies etc. can work together. So it tells us some problem statements, right? So cyber and how that problem can be solved. So that is mentioned, and I think these are all important topics that we need to prepare. For example, dark web monitoring and investigation. Dark web is a topic that is directly part of your GS3. Dark web is used for it's the the internet which is limited to very few people and normally used for organized used by organized crime syndicates or used in smuggling activities, illegal activities. Dark web is used, so we need to have a monitoring and investigation system. So use of cyberspace and organized crime, the dark web comes into picture. Then the issue of voice over internet protocol, the WhatsApp call and end-to-end encryption and everything. What if it is used for organizing public unrest, creating fake news, or um, planning violent activities, terrorist activities? So how can AI be used in that context? Okay, cybercrime is there, the awareness and education platform. We keep hearing about it. Predictive policing for mapping of crime and criminals. Predictive policing. Using of AI and big data for predictive policing. Cyber fraud detection. Community policing. By AI-driven sentiment analysis, what is happening on social media, getting an idea of that, and police is able to predict. Okay. Right, so these are themes that we can prepare, especially these are directly GS3, science and tech, as well as internal security, cyberspace. All of this is part of your GS3. Okay, next is paratroops, paramilitary troops deployed in left-wing extremist LWE hit areas trained to tackle Maoist tactics. Simple. Paratroops means paramilitary troops, and there are a number of paramilitary forces like BSF, CISF, etc. For left-wing areas, red corridor areas, we have CAPF mainly from center's point of view. Okay, so CAPF is deployed to deal with Maoist. Now, uh, our main concern here should be, if we look at the mains questions, GS3 mains internal security questions, they ask us a lot of questions on left wing extremism. Every alternate year there is a question, and typically here you are required to write a fact telling about the indication of left-wing extremism, that is, it is on the rise or it is declining. It asks, so you have to substantiate with the fact as to how severe this problem is. Then, what are the causes, oblique modus operandi of the Maoist? So that can be there. Then, what what mitigation measures have been taken by the government? What is the strategy of the government in dealing with it? And lastly, of course, the conclusion. Conclusion depends upon the how the question has been framed. So this has to be prepared, right? Okay. A left-wing extremism facts you can easily get. So we have the PIB also on this. Incidents of have reduced by 77% from all-time high of, right? So many incidents, plus geography wise also 40 about 40 districts are affected. Of these, 25 is having the mainly having the incidents of violence. So from anywhere place you can get these facts. Okay, next. On the event of Dashera, Prime Minister gave a speech and he says we need to renew pledges and calls to root out casteism and regionalism. Interestingly, these are all both communalism. These are important for your GS1 society point of view. We see questions. I don't find reference of religionalism over here. Okay, casteism, regionalism. Regionalism again, maybe Manipur, Kuki issue, and many other places it is happening. What other issues were mentioned? He talks about ensuring cleanliness, vocal for local, make in India, uh, do quality work. Okay, zero effect, zero defect. We can talk about that also. Travel through travel through India before traveling to foreign country. Promote Indian tourism. Okay, spread awareness about natural farming. The government has come up with zero budget natural farming. So these are the things. Then superfood, millets to be introduced in the diets. It should be promoted. All that. This is there in the opinion section. Rath Prabharis. Okay, now we are on the editorial page. So let's go one by one. This article I have already covered, breathlessness in Mumbai. Right. So climate change has negated its pollution cleansing advantage. City needs a plan for long-term control. Long-term control, you can figure out general points are there, what needs to be done. Okay. Climate change has negated its pollution cleansing advantage. What is the pollution cleansing advantage? It's a coastal area. The winds blow, so it clears the pollution. But because of this climate change, La Nina type of event, seasonal reversal of monsoon is not taking place. The winds are getting trapped. Next, we have an article, editorial on inflation. So it says, and there's nothing much actually, nothing much. Recently, RBI's Monetary Policy Committee had a meeting. Very recently. So the minutes of this committee has been released. Simple. What discussions took place, those have been released. So the MPC has simply said that they agree to the inflation targeting. That is, they want to keep the inflation target at 4% with a tolerance of plus minus 2%. That is 6%. Now, they have said that the inflation at the present moment, is 6.4%, and it is expected to come down to 5.6%. So it is above the tolerance, so above 6%, 4 plus 2%. Now, this inflation was primarily due to food prices. Consumer food price index surged to 11.5% from 4.5%. So it has gone up. So that was the reason. And this increase is mainly because of vegetable prices. Tomato, we all know, 400 rupees. So this is common sense actually. And vegetables in the consumer food price index accounts for 15%. Right? 15% weightage is for vegetables. Okay. Next, officer and prabhari. Prabhari means person who is in charge. Prabhari is person who is in charge. Okay. Now, central government has issued a notification or a circular telling that bureaucrats should be Rath Prabharis or Rath chariot. Prabhari means the person responsible for the chariot. In fact, it's the bureaucrat who's responsible for governance, for implementation of government schemes, etc., etc. Okay. So these Rath Prabharis are required to showcase to the public and inform the public of government initiatives and the good work that they have done. Who's doing it? The Rath Prabhari. So bureaucrat is being told that you have to do all this. By the way, previously we heard that army jawans are also, when they come on the leave and they're home, so that there they have to communicate about the good work done by the government. Okay. Now, this goes contrary to the idea of public servant working behind the scene. Public servants are in a governance structure, they are required to work behind the scene. We have, for example, a typical political government structure is political leadership who are voted by the public. They give directions in order to the bureaucracy. The political leadership gives them guidelines, directives as this has to be done, that has to be done, and then the bureaucrats who are experts in their field, they do the implementation work. It is the political leadership then which goes forward to the masses and they say that we have done this work, we have done that work. Right? That is the order. This is because we want bureaucracy to be neutral. We want bureaucracy to be faceless. Tomorrow, if the political leadership changes, today it is BJP, tomorrow if it is Congress, right? So we want the bureaucracy to work. They have new schemes and initiatives, so bureaucracy should implement it. But bureaucracy now is already the face of the schemes of the BJP government. So this affects, this creates, first of all, two power centers. One is political leadership and bureaucracy. Both are dealing with the public and they're telling the public, we have done this, we have done that. So that is there. So there will be creation of two power centers. That was not the idea. We just wanted political leadership and dealing with the public, while bureaucracy to be faceless. Second is, it affects the principle of neutrality and non-partisanship. By the way, if we look at the foundational values mentioned in the second ARC, it only talks about objectivity and non-partisanship. So non-partisanship means bureaucracy is not aligned with any political party. Right? Today's BJP, tomorrow it is Congress. They have to work neutrally with utmost honesty to their political masters. Right? With the change of guard, they have to also change. But making them face of particular schemes and initiatives, this will create an hindrance and it will create a mistrust. The new leadership is not going to trust them with this. Right? So there is a problem with this. And furthermore, this may lead to, the Congress is saying that this may lead to politicization of civil services. Previously, we were talking about politicization of the armed forces when they were told to showcase what the government is doing, etc. It is not part of their duty also. Okay, so that's the basic issue. The basic issue is non-partisanship. The basic issue is politicization of civil services. So these are things that we need to see. Mandal versus Mandal again. Okay, so this is by a professor from University in Hyderabad. So very interesting. He says that caste, we know this is in the context of Bihar caste survey. Bihar has done a caste census kind of thing where it has told us about the various breakup of the census is there, but also caste component is added. The union government is not happy with this development. BJP government at the center. Okay. Now, so he's weighing his opinion on this issue. He's saying that with the political masters, political leaders, they use caste, they design schemes for the welfare of the caste. When it is coming to seat distribution for elections, seat distribution when it takes place, then also caste criteria is looked at. So and so is from upper caste, so and so from the lower caste, etc., etc. Okay. We also have the policy of reservation for social upliftment of certain caste groups and for greater representation in educational institutions, in government institutions. So we have caste-based criteria in governance, let me put it that way. But there is no data. If you are using all this, doing all this, you should know what is the end outcome also. But there is no data because caste census is not there. Census is there, not caste census. So he's saying Bihar caste survey is a step in the right direction. And he says that a lot of things have come to light which were taken for granted. He says OBC community, which has 27% reservation as a whole, is actually 64%. It is a sizable population. Point something is there and point something. It comes down to 64%. It is the largest group, but it has reservation of only 27%. And within this also, extremely backward caste, or extremely backward community is the highest. 36% in Bihar, 36% of the population is extremely backward. Okay, so this is there. Then when we look at the reservation for scheduled caste, it is 15%, while and 15% because when the reservation was decided 15%, the population was that much only. But now it has increased to 19%. On the other hand, for the general community, because of the Supreme Court ceiling, it is 50%. So there is the unreserved seats are 50%. Let me put it that way. But the general community is only 15%, 1/5 in Bihar. So he says that there should be proportional reservation. The reservation should be proportionate to their population. Well, that is not the case. So that is point number one, he's saying. Point number one is actually this, that all these schemes, initiatives are there, we should know. Second point number is proportional reservation. With the data, maybe we can see that reservation ratios of these groups may increase. And in fact, the issue of caste may come back on the political agenda. Last, this, when the women reservation bill was being discussed, women reservation bill was reservation of women in Lok Sabha and in the state legislatures. 33% of the seats were to be reserved for women. Okay. So that time, these mandal political parties, RJD, JDU, Samajwadi Party, etc., they were saying that there should be women reservation bill, fine, but there should be OBC quota as well. That was their demand. Now, that point is being validated. They're saying that women from the general community will get more representation because they are a significant, they have more share in reservation in a way, or they're more unreserved seats. While OBC, they are 64%, but their representation is only 27%. So it's basically saying that women from general category will corner most of the seats, although their population is lesser. So that's the viewpoint that we have over here. Okay, things not very good in Gaza, right? Violence is increased by Israel. Now, in this context, France's President Macron, he meets Bibi. Who's Bibi? Bibi is the nickname kind of things for Netanyahu, the Israeli president. He says that fight must be without mercy. Fight be, Israel should go all out against Palestine, but also not without rules. But some rules have to be abided by, which indicates him saying this indicates that human right values should be protected at the same time. The way the killings are going, these are not correct. Okay. And after this, Macron will go to Ramallah. He'll meet the Palestinian Authority. Ramallah is the capital of Palestine in West Bank, Central West Bank. Okay, now we come to the economy section. GST authorities on an overdrive with notices as firms fend off tax demands. Fine. So tax disputes are taking place with respect to the GST. Now coming to the main article. US bond yields hits 16-year high of 5%. Why is it rising and what does it signal? Okay. So first of all, what is bond yield? And before bond yield, what are bonds? Bonds are basically a debt instrument for raising capital. Bonds are sold. So investor buys these bonds. So money, the person who wants to raise money, that person gets money. While on the other hand, the person buys this paper instruments known as bond. Now these bonds have a coupon rate. Like FD, there is an interest rate. So bonds have a coupon rate. Right? It's an interest on the bonds. Plus, these bonds can be bought and sold. In the secondary markets, the bond can be traded, bought and sold. Okay. So bond yield is simply a return on bonds. Somebody buys a bond and sells the bond, that is the return. In addition to this, there was a coupon rate. Okay. Now, if somebody buys the bond at a higher price, buying it at a higher price, right, then naturally the bond yield will come down because you're buying at a higher price. So your ability to earn profit becomes low. Okay, so it is inversely proportionate. Somewhere mentioned, didn't highlight it. I hope this concept of bond yield is clear. It's simply the return on bonds. Now the bond yields hits 16-year high of 5%. This is very interesting. 16-year high. What will happen 16 years back? 15 years back, actually, 2023, 15 years back was 2008. And 2008, we had we had the recession in USA. The Lehman Brothers crisis happened in USA, 2008. So a year before that is 16th year, 2007, 2006 is the 16th year. The bond yields were like this, 5% high. This was very high in the US context, very high. And following this, we had the recession. There are concerns in the US economy that this is an indication of a 2008 like event. Point number one, right? A recession may be following. We already hear about macroeconomic indicators like inflation, etc., not good for the Western economies as a whole. Okay, so that was the one issue that I wanted to raise. I have not written it anywhere, but I wanted to state it. Now coming to this very simple analysis that we have, the yields have increased. Simple, bond yields have increased upward of 5%. So this means if a person is getting more return on buying bonds, if yields are increasing, naturally there will be preference for bonds. People will put their money in bonds instead of banks, instead of equity markets, right? There'll be preference for bonds. Simple. Okay. Now, most of the bonds are actually issued by the government or on behalf of the government. The government has to raise capital, has to raise money to run the government. So sometimes it, obviously tax revenues are there, but even with that, it is not able to do it. So the government sells bonds, or through their central bank, they sell bonds and they get money. Now, if the bond yields are increasing, if the return on the bond is increasing, that means the government will have to pay more, or the cost of raising capital increases. So the governments will have to pay more. US government will have to pay more. However, what happens is, in the case of India, if US investor, if the US bonds, their yield is more, so the US people who used to invest in India because return on India is higher, they'll prefer to be in US itself. They will not like to come to India because currency risk is also there. What happens? What if the dollars appreciate as compared to rupees? This person bought bonds in India and the rupees have depreciated. He has to spend more to buy back the same amount of dollars. Okay, so they'll prefer to be in US itself. Simple. Okay. So India, if they have to attract, they have to also increase the bond yields, and that would happen. So the bond yields in India will also increase. And if the bond yields in India increase, so the Indian government also, which is borrowing, will have to pay more. So the cost of capital increases. So the interest burden on the Indian economy or the Indian government is actually increasing. And also, investments in Indian equity will also come down. In fact, we will see outflow of foreign capital from India to outside. Okay. Then, bond yields are seen as an indication of inflation coming. It's an indication of inflation. Historically, we see when the bond yields increase, inflation also increases. So this is expected. We're expecting inflation to rise. Now, imagine people are putting more money into the bonds. So this is in at the cost of banks. So the banks are not getting adequate amount of capital. They have to run the banks also. So the bank rates also increase. Banks increase their interest rates so that the money that was going to the bonds is diverted towards the banks. So the bond yields pushes the bank's interest rates. US Fed may also be forced to increase their interest rates. Okay, fine. So that is the thing. Now, think from India's perspective, when the US announces an rate hike, we see outflow of capital from India to outside. So we will expect dollars from India. The US investors who invested in India will likely to go back to the US, maybe reinvest in a later time. So these are the basic issues. Typically, I expect it in the mains, but given that mains has happened already and a year, there is a big gap over here. I don't expect it in the mains point of view. It's more of a prelims thing now. But yes, we should have an understanding of this overall issue. Now, nothing much actually from today's explained section. Behind Mumbai's poor air, we have already discussed, right? Telangana is having some preventive detention law, but there is, so preventive detention law all tells us about how the preventive detention works, which you have already studied in your Lakshmikant. Tells us about Article 22, which deals with preventive detention. Okay, next. Most gender equal Iceland sees women's strike. Here's why. Okay, so first of all, who's saying women Iceland is gender equal? So there is a global gender gap ranking released by the World Economic Forum. These are things that I asked in the prelims. So according to this, Iceland is the most gender equal. Now, I didn't mention, but India's ranking also we should know. And just when we're talking about the rankings, there is also gender parity index, gender inequality index. Gender inequality is by the UNDP, right? So we should know all these indicators. Okay. So yeah, so even Iceland, which is having equality, their woman is saying that it is unequal. They are having this protest. I am not able to pronounce this. Kalaro Peta Jafnti. You call this equality. Literal translation is you call this equality. They're saying that women are underpaid. The care economy, which is heavily dominated by women, their hours are less. Their working hours are their payments are less. So that is a problem. Okay, so this basically